The Lost Cryptids Conservatory, where we will shatter your reality to bring you closer to the truth.
All right, guys, welcome back to another live show with the Lost Cryptids Conservatory. Of course, your host, me, Blake, and co-host, Chad. And our special guest today is Shetan Noir.
Hi, guys.
How are you doing today and tonight, Shetan?
I am doing
warm?
Good. Oh, yes. We're all from Michigan, so it's been snowy today, and it's cold outside, but it's nice and warm here in my office, so ready to go.
Yeah, that's right. That's good.
150-pound mastiffs snuggling against you help too, don't they?
Actually, she squishes me, like the force of gravity that she has a magical powers that it just feels like she's like 1,000 pounds heavier. But right now she's on the floor. We're going to leave her there because otherwise she will just take over the podcast.
Yeah. So, glad to have you on. It's always awesome to have you on. It's always interested to hear about, the local stuff and in Michigan. And, you're pretty much an expert on local Michigan sea serpent folklore, especially, but Michigan folklore, And,
I do. I have to say the lake monsters are my first love and what I love to research a lot of, but I don't get nearly as many reports on lake monsters sightings as I do Bigfoot and Dogman. So, why starve when you've got, plenty of, peanut butter and jelly. So
exactly. You're an author, you're an editor of the Sasquatch GQ magazine, right?
yeah.
Yep. You also teach cryptozoology courses at some local colleges on sea serpents and local folklore legends.
I teach two courses at the Kellogg Community College and Owens Community College, and the first one is the paranormal history of the Great Lakes, and then I have a second course that I'm teaching that is cryptozoology of North America.
That's awesome. That's so awesome. And and you're a speaker. You speak at a lot of events and stuff.
Oh, yes.
And so, for those who don't know you, there's a little background and stuff. And so definitely glad to have you back on the show. And
glad to be here.
Yeah. So have you had any new reports of anything or anything going on lately?
Well, it's been
Corona.
Yeah, 2020 has been a very weird year. I was supposed to do like over 30 events this year, last year with 2020. And it basically came down to Zoom presentations. And I don't mind doing the Zoom presentations. It's a way for me to, do my presentations and, get it out there. But you don't have the one-on-one interactions with people who want to come up to you afterwards and say, hey, I didn't want to, raise my hand, but, when I was a kid or 2 years ago or, 6 months ago, this happened to me. And this is, my story. Do you want to hear it? Sure, I want to hear it. Of course, I want to hear it. When you do the Zoom presentations, you don't, get those opportunities. So I'm hoping in 2021 we have more of the in-person presentations and the chance to connect with people and actually get other, people's stories and because that's where you get your source material from is people who have had interactions of their own and then they talk to you.
Exactly. It's way better, more fun time, and that interaction, especially meeting other researchers and fellow cryptozoologists, or other people in the field. It's mainly about that. I would say that's probably at least 50% of it, because that's how you make your friends, your contacts, and everything else. Like you're saying.
And that's I love talking to people who come to the conventions that come in, they sit down, they listen, they talk to you. But it's also, like you said, it's an opportunity to network and talk to other presenters, other vendors who are there. Because I do presentations, but I have my own podcast, which is Into the Liminal Abyss, Paranormal Podcast. And we talk about all matters of high strangeness. And then I am also the head writer for a company of magazines called Squatch GQ. And we also have titles, Squatch Digest, G Hunter, which is Ghosts in the Paranormal, Watchers Magazine, which is more for the UFOs and alien crowd. And then I'm really, talking him in, the publisher and owner, into doing a Weird Travels magazine also, for people who want to seek out their own adventures, but maybe don't know where to start looking. And so you will get my firsthand accounts of places that I go and people that I meet, experiences I have, and you can make up your own mind if you want to go to these places. So when you're going to conventions, this gives you so much source material to work with of just people that you meet and talk to. It's really, I will do the Zoom, but I much prefer the live in person because that's where you network and you meet people.
Exactly. And speaking of that, you're going to be a speaker at our event this summer, July 17th.
Yes, I will.
The Michigan Bigfoot Conference here. You are going to be a wonderful speaker to hear, and for people to meet, because this will be a place where people can meet up and join up and network, and hopefully we get some good reports and stuff for everyone too, because that's a good main thing. Like you're saying, is a lot of people actually come to these events because they've had experiences and they want to know more answers than, like you said, they might be too shy to raise their hand, but they'll come up to you when they get a chance, when it's by themselves and no one else is kind of watching and listening, and they can tell you their experience and stuff that has never been heard or recorded. So that
is usually how it goes. I always leave, time at the end of my presentations for questions and answers. And, one or two people will raise their hands and have some input. But then after I get back to my table, that's when people come up to me and they're like, hey, I didn't want to say anything before, but this is, my experience or somebody I know's experience. And, that's usually how it goes. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Chad, you want to jump in there about the event and stuff? And
well, for starters, very excited to have you, Shetan. So what we talked about before the show, how we have this set up, how you'll be we're going to get you on the the ballroom stage, which
Mhm.
is a huge room. But then for any of your followers, let them know.
Oh yeah.
You've got that auditorium that'll seat. It's 90 seats, movie theater setup,
Yep.
projection screen, state of the art sound, and they can add like 30, 40 seats in the
Wow.
very back. So, that'll be going on too, people. When the Bigfoot conference is going on,
Mhm.
there'll be other speaking going on if there's somebody that you're more interested in hearing. And
Yeah, I mean it's it's looking to be a very exceptional event, and you really are bringing in a lot of first class cryptozoologists with Ken Gerhardt being the head speaker, and he boy, he knows quite a bit of everything, and it's always interesting to hear his presentations. Very enjoyable. Now, for me, I do have a time slot, and I have been working on a presentation for the Bigfoot people. And it's something that I find quite fascinating because, as somebody who's worked with, breeding dogs and showing dogs, coat color has always been very interesting to me. And we see a lot of variations with Bigfoot reports of different colors of hair that people report seeing. And I'm going to delve deeper into that because I do have access to some very interesting people in the black bear world who have some knowledge of different coat colors and how they coincide with different habitats that these bears live in. And you have to think, if the rule applies to the black bear, then it's probably going to apply to the Bigfoots of camouflage is your best weapon when you're out in the wild, for hunting and for avoiding other predators. So that will probably be the presentation that I do for the Bigfoot end of the Bigfoot conference. And then for the other part, boy, I have so many things I can offer.
and whatever you want to talk about, it's a free for all over there, you
I
guys. The
know,
auditorium's going to be a free for all.
I
All
know, it's
cryptid,
gonna be awesome.
all ghost, all day.
It's gonna
So
be awesome.
everybody isn't into Bigfoot, and why should we leave them out when we
Right.
have access to get people like you and some of the other people that we haven't announced yet, and to be able to get people to be face to face and get to talk to them. And so the venue's so huge, man. We just, why waste it?
Right.
Let's
Yeah,
just go all in.
use every bit of it. Yep.
Let's go all in.
Mhm.
Exactly. It's and we got, like Chad was mentioning, we got some headline speakers that are not even announced yet, and
Oh
we
yeah.
got definitely, and we're like we said, we're now it's this whole auditorium, the free for all Parafest thing it's going to be pretty epic and stuff. So a lot of things, in all aspects, because a lot of people are experiencing everything, either the woo side of Bigfoot, but
Mhm.
ghost, everything. So it's all out there in the same environment as Bigfoot. So
Yeah.
it does make you wonder: does it have correlation? Do they have maybe anything going on? Are they still totally separate? But if they are separate, they must have interactions and stuff too. So
Yeah.
again, it's value to be learned from, in all this aspects of
Yeah. And
this high strangeness.
there's really no right or wrong answers when you're talking cryptozoology or the paranormal, because let's face it, nobody has, caught any of these cryptids and been able to examine them, been able to observe their behaviors, personalities, what they can actually do. So, it's all just comparing notes and, you know, forming our answers from there. Nobody's really a true expert on any of these subjects, but there's a lot of people who do a lot of research, and we talk to other people who do a lot of research, and we form our answers. And we try to provide other people with answers, so that everybody has more pieces of the puzzle that we're all trying to solve.
Now, Blake and I definitely consider ourselves, we're Bigfoot researchers, but we are called the Lost Cryptids because we do consider the other things out there, and they do interest us. Where do you stand on ghosts? Because there's paranormal groups that.
Yes.
So are you gonna?
I have had quite a few different paranormal experiences, and one of the most pronounced ones was I was in Mackinac City. The tourist, part before you sail over to, you have to take one of the ferries over to Mackinac Island. But I had stopped there in June. This was a couple of summers ago, and it was me and my mom. I had my miniature pincher Tegan with me. She goes everywhere with me, and we had my mom's German Shepherd. Now the German Shepherd was being kind of a idiot dog, so my mom had her and put her back in the car after getting her fudge. So Tegan and I went in, and there's one public bathroom on the one end. Now, there wasn't a whole lot of people there. It was just the beginning of the season. So I had gone into this first bathroom stall with her. She sits on my lap when I do this. And then we left. So fast forward a couple of months later to my Paracon. I'm actually on my way home from my Paracon, and I had told my dad and my brothers that I would bring them home fudge from Mackinac City and saltwater taffy. So I had stopped, and I had gone into that bathroom, and just as I'm leaving the stall, I hear a voice say, "What? No puppy this time?"
Yeah,
so,
no one's in there with you, right? So.
And nobody else was in the bathrooms. So something had taken notice of me and Tegan, and when I came back several months later and didn't have her with me, they were inquiring as to where she was. And so that was a like, what the hell, I checked every one of the bathroom stalls. Nobody else is in there. Walked out. There's nobody outside of the bathrooms. I'm like, how? Even if somebody had recognized me, there's so many thousands of people who go through Mackinac City every day. Why would they single me out? And so it is some spirit. Either they like dogs, or thought my dog was cool, or they noticed me with my teal hair and decided to communicate. So yes, I definitely believe in the paranormal.
Or they realize that you have the ability, because not everybody has this ability to contemplate ghost speech.
Right.
I very rarely have ever heard a voice that wasn't there, but for me, it's always just an all-knowing thought. When something is speaking to me, it's almost like I'm speaking to me, but it's just like, I know out of nowhere. Yep. I know. It's like a voice without sound. It's just like,
Yeah, for me, I have had several disembodied voice experiences where apparently I am in tune with them and they can communicate to me, and it's exciting, but it's also you get that like just missed a car crash, type feeling go through your body. That freezy cold, weird sensation. And it's like, okay, I know I heard what I heard, and they're talking to me again. So, but I've had this happen. I've heard spirits talk in a couple different locations. So they're not all the same spirits. So apparently they just know that they can communicate with me.
Yeah, there must, again, this using senses and whatever, animals and stuff. We only see in 3D and stuff. We have our human eyes and our human senses that we perceive, but there's so many other things going on that our bodies are feeling, our minds putting out, our electro energy, our thoughts, everything is interacting with everything else, that these spirits and animals and Sasquatch could be picking up on all sorts of stuff and could be reading us, and so these spirits could be communicating or messing with, Because you do hear reports of, sometimes spirits messing with a certain someone, or playing tricks or even scratching certain people. When people have investigations, they scratch a certain individual or they'll talk to someone else and they don't have all the same equal interaction from the same.
Now, see, I've only experienced the scratching once, and it was it's kind of like a October Halloween tradition. My aunt and my cousin and myself will go to different cemeteries, and we'll see if we can get any pictures of anything. We go at night, and we see if we can get any pictures or EVPs, and we had just by chance found the cemetery that was actually right across the street from the Walmart, and very old cemetery. And so I thought, well, we'll just go in there and drive around. And so we went in and we parked, and we were no sooner out of the vehicle than my aunt thought she saw a cat underneath this one tree. And being cold, it was kind of cold out and we were concerned for it. So we were trying to call the cat to us. And we got some pictures of some, eyes that, we assumed were the cat's. But we never got, close to the cat. And actually, we heard a growl at one point. And we thought, okay, maybe this is a feral kitty and we're just going to leave it alone now. So it wasn't until we got, I dropped them off at home. I got home myself. And usually when I'm done with a ghost investigation, I will either drink peppermint tea or I'll take a bath of peppermint in it, because that helps with protection and with, getting spirits away from you. As soon as my hand went into the hot water, it started stinging, and I was like, whoa, what's going on? And then I looked at the back of my hand, and I had 3 scratches on the back of my hand that I had not felt earlier in the night, probably because my hands were cold. But as soon as I put them into the hot water that had the peppermint oil in it, immediately started burning, and I could see the 3 scratches on it.
So they appeared. They appeared like
time.
They appeared like nail scratches, or I mean,
yes.
So
yep.
Not like you walked through a tree and got a couple of scratches.
No. This was just like if you were trying to pick up a cat and got scratched by it, but this was 3 scratches, and they were about a ½ inch each apart, going across the back of my hand.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah, that happens, and that's why you never. It seems like you don't really know with spirits, especially. You can't see them and stuff, but if you're interacting with something good, something bad, children, demonic, animal, or anything in between, unless it chooses to tell you, or I don't know if you could even believe that, but it seems like there's a lot going on there. When you get into it, it's, you talk about, demons and, people who pass away and all that. But like when you jump and coincide it with Bigfoot and stuff, and you add the same, maybe throw a little Nephilim and demon in there, it's, you can't believe that. But if you had these ghosts, they're spirits, they're demons, didn't they have a body before that and stuff, So,
and with the Bigfoots being a living being, what's to say that some of these sightings that people have where they see the creature and then it just disappears, maybe they are seeing a residual haunting of that, of an animal that died, whether it was from old age or maybe it was, in conflict with a rival. That could explain a portion of the Bigfoot sightings or cryptid sightings that we, get. Don't think it explains all of them. I think we actually are dealing with living, breathing creatures at different points.
That would explain when people say they cloak.
Yes.
So that could be an explanation where somebody said it just was there and it disappeared. We're diving deep. Let's keep diving.
And well, you also got to think that the forest and the whole woods, of course, itself has a lot of death going on. You know,
Mhm.
it's all death. You know, a lot of animals are dying, competition. You know, humans, warfare. You know, all in
Mhm.
between are in these forests. So that's a lot of energy, a lot of things happening, and there could be very haunted spots. You know, could
Mhm.
residual animals, and you know, we don't really know how all that interacts with each other because our science isn't there yet.
Right.
Our understanding isn't there yet. And
Well, even if you consider that the trees are living, breathing
exactly, and
creation,
communicating with each other.
and it's almost, I like to go hiking. I take Tegan with me hiking everywhere. And but if you stop for a few minutes, especially if you're alone on a trail and you just listen, and you can pick up on the individual sounds that the trees make, and it's almost like they are talking to one another, letting each other know that you're coming. And it's you can get very overpowered with it, and I can understand why people will, when they're hiking, they let's say they go off the trail to use the rest, to go potty on the trail, or they see something that they want to go get a picture of, and then they can't find the trail again. So now they're lost in the wilderness. And we get reports of this all the time. And it's, people don't realize, yeah, when you're on a trail, it's easy to go hiking and it's easy to find your way back. But when you get off that trail and go maybe 10 feet, 20 feet off the trail, and you get, turned around, things start getting very dangerous very quickly.
Yeah,
Where
exactly. And real quick, there's a guy who studied basically the trees over in Europe. I can't remember
Yep.
the species, but basically he did a study of how they were communicating with each
Mhm.
other, and it was very telling and very kind of creepy. You know, they're very alive and almost sentient
Mhm.
of organism.
Yeah, it's there was a researcher who was documenting down in South America how different trees would um, allow colonies of ants to live on them. But if another tree started getting bigger than it, then that tree would start leaning towards that tree, and the ants on that tree would go on to the other tree and eat it down to nothing, so that their host tree would have access to, the sunshine and the rain. And so very interesting, the lives of ants and trees.
Well, yeah, I mean that's very interesting, and that would would show some kind of intelligence and planning
Oh
and strategy. I mean, again, we don't really have a full understanding of everything that's going on in the natural world, let alone all this paranormal, you know, cryptid world. So I think it's
yeah.
very
Hmm.
telling. You know, we can't explain a lot of things, and that's where, you know, some of that woo comes in. And
Yeah.
I don't think all necessarily woo, but it's just normal stuff that we have not explained yet because our science isn't there yet. We don't have the technology or the knowledge or the understanding like we used to have.
Right.
You know, a lot of
Or
these ancients to talk
nobody's
about
thought
this stuff.
to nobody's thought to research it yet, because how many times do you walk past a tree or a rock every day and you give it no other thought than, oh, it's the leaves are looking really nice today, or wow, the sun looks really pretty on that. um there's so many things that people just walk by every day, and they don't really give it any other thought. Going back to the hiking, a lot of people who are hiking the trail, they're paying attention to the trail in front of them for roots, rocks, whatever, because the last thing you want to do is trip and hurt yourself on a trail. And you're almost doing a disservice. Of course you have to watch the trail, but you could have things 5 feet off into the woods and you walk right by them and never even see them.
Okay, Shetan, have you ever had that accident on the trail?
Not yet, and I will knock on wood, because I do trip a lot just walking on flat ground. But I pay very, very close attention when I'm hiking on trails, because I like to go, where there's rock formations and waterfalls and cool stuff like that. And that's not always the smoothest of trails. It also helps that I have a miniature pincher who likes to rock hop, and she's always like, look at this one, look at this one. And so we're always paying attention to where we walk.
Well, I'm guilty. I've had a couple accidents out there. Didn't get injured, but
well,
yeah, I would say the two scariest ones that I've been that I've done was there's one in Ohio, Nelson Kennedy Ledges, and it's a beautiful rock outcropping, but it's not very well maintained. So you have root formations that are covered with leaves, and you have jagged rocks that are sticking out that are covered with leaves. So you really have to, until you get onto the stoneway pathway, you really have to be careful. And you're going up quite a steep incline to get to that. And then the other one would be in Wisconsin. It's right there where the Devil's Lake is, but there are stone stepways that go quarter of a mile up. And I thought that would be the easy trail to do without realizing that lots of people do this trail and the rocks are so polished smooth that it's like ice. And there's no railway. And so I did that trail in I want to say late September, maybe into October. And I had my hiking sandals on, which have really good tread. I don't slip on marble floors when I walk with those, but man, going up this trail, it was quarter mile up of these very polished, slippery rock steps. And I got up to the top and was taking pictures of everything. And then I looked at the people who were up there. I said, so how do you get down? And they're like, the same way you came up. I'm like, bullshit. I'm going to die. And of course I have Tegan with me. So I'm trying to figure out how can I go back down, because it's slippery. And going up, you have at least the counterbalance. Going down, you don't. And I'm like, I know I'm just going to wipe out and I'm going to
and Tegan's pulling either way up. Tegan's probably helping you go up and on the way down.
So I finally, I got down the first few levels, and then it was just straight steps, down, turning here and there. I thought, you know what, I'm going to do this like a kid would. So I sat down on my butt and I slid and dropped down, slid and dropped down to each and every step. And Tegan sat on my lap the whole way, like, this is fun. Like, you don't even know how bad this is. So that would be my second scariest trail that I've done.
Now I got a question for you about lake monsters. Seeing that, what lake monster fascinates you the most? It's a two-part question. And is there any reports of giant salamanders in Michigan or giant lizards? Two-part question.
Well, that's quite interesting. The one that I find the most interesting for lake monsters is actually Inabishu in Lake Superior, because the Native Americans have talked about this creature for a very, very long time. And Lake Superior is so vast, so deep. We really don't know, what could be down there. But for lake monsters as a whole, if I had a bucket list, I would say if I were going to go investigate 5 of them, it would probably be Inabishu in Lake Superior. It would be the Almata in near the Almata River in Darien, which is down south. Probably Champ, the Lake Champlain monster, Ogopogo, and then boy, I would love to just explore as much of the mid-continent waterway that went from it went from like New Mexico all the way up to British Columbia. And that was a great, expanse of water where plesiosaurs swam, ichthyosaurs, all types of marine reptiles. I would love to get the chance to go, on some of these fossil investigations. Now, for the salamanders, I was just talking to Joe Perdue, and if that name rings a bell, he was just on the newest episode of Finding Bigfoot. He's really into all different kinds of cryptids, but we were talking, and he's into reptiles, which I am fascinated by reptiles and amphibians too. But we were talking about the different amphibians, salamanders that live all around the world, all around the country. Now, to my knowledge, in Michigan, about the biggest one we have is, I want to say, about a hand, like the length of your hand, from snout to tip, maybe up to 12 inches. If you have a very old, adult, of the species. As far as I know, we don't have anything like the Japanese giant salamander, which is about the size of a small person, at least 5 feet long, and I would say weight variance just depends on what they have access to eat, but 5 foot long, for the giant Japanese salamander. The only one that I know that we have is at the Detroit Zoo. They have the Japanese. I don't think they have the Chinese giant salamander. And then we've got the hellbenders, but you find those further down in the warmer, states. As long as they can bury themselves in the mud, just like the turtles and frogs do, then they can still function, but at a very slower rate. Now, up here in Michigan, going further, Wisconsin, Minnesota, up in Canada, you're seeing a smaller species, because the smaller you are, it's actually the easier to find a hiding place in somebody's home or sewer duct or whatever, to keep yourself warm. So I would say 12 inches at the most would be the biggest that we're going to find here in Michigan.
Plus the less they'd have to eat, they wouldn't have to require evolution.
Like with turtles, when October is usually when they start finding their spots, that they're going to, bed down for the winter. And they usually stop eating around that time. And so, they go into a very, very slow state of living where, their heart only beats a few times a minute. They, their breathing slows down, their metabolism slows down. And a lot of the females, that's actually when they are, they will breed right before they go into the hibernation state. And then in the springtime is when they are coming out and finding a place to bury their eggs, and then they go off, and they're really not very nurturing mothers after that. As long as the nest is built and the eggs are laid, then they're off.
All right, let's get even way more off topic. Let's jump back into it's not necessarily paranormal, maybe you'd call it, but what about otherworldly entities or beings? Where do you stand on UFOs, and do they have anything to do with cryptids and demonic activity? Do aliens? Just having to throw it out there.
Yeah, I don't know about the alien demon scenario. I think that there is enough potential with negative energies that have been manifested since humans started, worshiping a higher power. There's always good, there's always evil. And if you put enough thought into either one, you get manifestations of something. So I don't think that demons necessarily are an alien species. Now, I do think that we do have and have had contact in the past with a lizard man or reptilian type alien. We've seen depictions of them in ancient civilizations, stoneworkings, paintings, carvings. And when you think about it, I mean, nowadays it's easy for anybody to just go to the store, get art supplies, make whatever art they want, and boom, there's their artistic, impressions for everyone to see. But 1,000 years ago, you basically had your stone and you had carving tools, which you had to fashion yourself, or somebody else had to fashion for you, and you bartered with them. And it was actually, some time and work to carve these stone elements and to get them right. We look at like the Aztec ruins, the Mayan ruins, and the artwork, the ancient Egyptians, the Sumerians, the artwork that they have left behind. That wasn't just, somebody deciding to doodle on the wall, a 3-year-old with a paintbrush. They actually, had a mindset of what they, were tasked with creating. And you have to think that, if they had to go through all this trouble just to make this, visual representation of what they saw and carve it into stone, then they had to have been interacting with someone or something that inspired this.
Would you think most likely it would be a diamond tool they probably use to etch this stuff in, right? I mean, it wouldn't be anything primitive like a rock that they're using to carve, as precise as some of this stuff is.
Well, with the Egyptians and the Aztecs, I know that the Aztecs, the Central America tribes, they had access to I'm trying to think of what it was, black hematite or jade? No. So they had, it's actually a gem that's created from volcanic activity. They would harvest this, and that was their tools for doing everything. So they, very intricate work with, what they were doing, but also some of their practices of sacrificing humans, and, cutting out the beating heart. Something had to influence that behavior and tell them that, that was the right thing to do. So, you don't know where some of these thoughts come from and why they decide that this behavior is the best. Too, something has to influence that. So it's very, very interesting. I would love to go back in history.
Sounds very sacrificial. Sounds very sacrificial.
Well, isn't it interesting how multiple cultures sometimes end up, sacrificing, blood and all of that stuff, or that evil, seems to creep in almost every culture, even the tribes in the jungle, like Papua New Guinea and stuff. There's always good and bad going on, it seems like. And even ancient times, they probably knew a little bit better. They have all this lost knowledge that we have, like the Aztecs. They're the city of the gods and all this stuff.
And you have so many different in all these different civilizations, you have so many deities that you do have human looking ones that they have stories about, but you have just as many humanoid, half human, half animal type gods that they discuss and they worship. And you have to, were they interacting with another civilization that wasn't Earth-based? Were they interacting with aliens? And this is how they were, told to grow as a culture by doing these things.
Or spirits, or if you're more biblical, they could be fallen angels or Nephilim, or everything in between. Again, we just don't know. It's like we're a civilization of amnesia. We just keep forgetting of what we used to be, what we used to know, especially from around the world and from each culture, because each culture. They talk about these ruins or this stuff. Our ancestors built these, but we don't know how. Or our ancestors did this, but we don't know how. It just repeats and repeats and repeats all over the world with all these cultures and all these magnificent pyramids that they keep finding all over the world that are very relatable, and these mathematics are matching and very similar. It's something was going on, worldwide. Stuff was going on. And
so think about it like this. So at the time that the Great Pyramids were being built, there were still mammoths walking the Alaskan tundra. So if you were to bring a representative from the Egyptians and the Eskimos, and you were to say, okay, and you were to show them a picture of an elephant, well, the nomadic tribes of the Alaska tundra would say, no, that's not correct. It has to have fur on it, and its tusks, are formed differently. And the Egyptians would say, no. They have, it's just skin with a few little hairs there, and their tusks are more straight. You would have two different people talking about a very similar animal. They're not similar, they're not the same animal, but the picture to one would be different to the other, and would be, mind blowing in that sense of, what do you mean elephants have fur? Or what do you mean woolly mammoths are naked and they how do you keep them from freezing? So, just, that concept alone is something to consider.
Oh yeah. And again, if they're building pyramids 10,000 years ago, the civilization is much, much older, because to get to that point you have to start at a point, and it takes a lot of years in between. So this whole concept of civilization, or humans are relatively only 6,000 years or a couple thousand years, or the first civilizations only this 1,000 years, but it seems like a lot of it's like hundreds of thousands of years old, or possibly evidence of maybe millions of years old of humans.
There's theories out there. That primitive humans millions of years ago were more intelligent than us. But after millions of years, everything that they created would just be disintegrated and just rot away. Right.
We find ancient weird objects, maybe like screws and certain things that seem out of place, and they're millions of years old and stuff. But it's very interesting.
Yeah, but there's different intelligences. When you talk about human intelligence, if you took let's say 12-year-old child in today's society and you were to drop them into
Mike, something with the mic.
Oh.
It's like you sound like a mouse. It's something. Move it or something.
Can you hear me better now?
You still sound like a mouse.
I wonder what's
I'm
going
not
on.
picking on
Sounds
you.
like you're further away from the mic than you originally were.
Okay.
But
closer to my face.
no. I might. I don't know. It's weird.
Oh, can you hear it? Does it sound better now?
No, you still sound like a mouse, sweetie.
Huh, I wonder what's going on.
I don't know. Are you possessed?
No.
Did Minnie Mouse take over your body?
No.
It could be StreamYard. You know, they're always working on stuff and expanding, and a lot of people using it. And there are technical difficulties that do arise. So, but anyways, Dave had a good comment with the DNA bottleneck. You know, 72,000 years ago, only a few thousand people were alive on the Earth after the volcano in Indonesia. And there's been several other times where you know, massive catastrophic events have almost led to extinction of humans, but of other animals, and have led to other evolutions. So it makes you wonder what was really going on back then, and you know, where the Bigfoot line lies, and how they survived the same type of catastrophic events as humans.
Yeah, it's yeah. I go back to thinking of, you know, there's so many branches on the evolutionary tree of life, and you know, Bigfoot just decided, the Sasquatches, they just decided that they would take their own route, but they have also lived in the same world that we have, and you can see what humans are capable of. So, people are intelligence species that want to interact with us. Take a look at what we've done with the planet. Pollution, viral diseases. You know, we have decimated our own planet. I mean, just look at any of the coastlines of the oceans and all the pollution that comes out. The sea life did not create this pollution. Humans did. And so, you know,
the Earth creates it too, though. The carbon emission from our own Earth is the biggest pollution in the atmosphere. It's not from our buildings and factories. It's coming right from our ground. I don't know. What do you think, Blake? Boot her out and invite her back in?
Yeah, that's what I was about to actually say. So let me try to do that, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah, you know, technical difficulties, of course. It happens. We're not the
Absolutely.
only one. But it was sucks. I know I was having my own technical stuff with my phone, nothing to do with StreamYard. All right. So she'll join up back in a second, but yeah. Very interesting stuff we've been talking about, and all great stuff that we're going to be talking about at the conference in the that special free for all room, and you know, we're going to have lots of vendors and stuff, and paranormal type of vendors also are going to be hanging out at that area too. So it's going to be a pretty awesome event, and hopefully get a lot of you guys there, because we want to meet a lot of you guys and hang out, and you know, hopefully get a lot of reports too. Is like we were saying at the beginning of the show, is hopefully gets a lot of local reports, and possibly new ones that we can go out and investigate. Of course, is what we're really hoping for too. And so I can't wait. I'm excited. I'm excited to announce more speakers. I'm excited to just go to this event. I'm excited for what we're doing after, you know, doing our own expedition with some of these guys we got at the conference. So It's going to be
what I'm looking
and
forward
the other
to.
stuff we got planned for this entire, summer season coming up for the Lost Cryptids. We're constantly going out in the field. We're constantly doing this. Got a lot of projects going on and ideas flowing. So
Dewey Lake again.
Yeah, we're having the Dewey Lake Monster Conference.
Second annual.
Yep, over at it's in Dowagiac, Michigan, but it's a little west of that. It's called the Sister Lakes area, and over at the Sister Lake Brewery. Dewey Lake is one of those lakes that makes up Sister Lakes area, and the monster from the '60s, a Sasquatch type creature. Terrorized the town and stuff, and so left its mark. And so we'll be going out there, have a nice little conference and stuff, and it's very small atmosphere, so very awesome little town and stuff too. It's very it's a nice little tourist vacation spot. Great lakes, great fishing, great boat access, and very squashy, a lot of farm fields and stuff, a lot of squash fields, and the vegetable fields that definitely can feed not only a Sasquatch, but anything and everything. So without further ado, here's Shetan again.
Welcome back.
And Shetan is going to be speaking at the Dewey Lake Monster Conference. So she will be hanging out there too, guys. Another great little event, and Michigan is pretty is a pretty unique state. We're the Great Lakes state. We have the Great Lakes, and there's actually kind of a missing. There's a paranormal triangle in the Michigan, the Great Lakes Triangle, and a lot of missing people. There's a ton of missing people on the Great Lakes, but also on land. Missing 401 has its own cluster, but the Great Lakes are its own cluster in and of itself, because there's airplanes, there's ships that routinely go missing, unexplainably. Why don't you take us into that?
One of the Great Lakes actually has its own triangle, from what I've been able to detect with my research. So you've got most people know about the Lake Michigan Triangle, which is Ludington,
Right.
Wisconsin, Michigan, and then straight down to Ludington. Now, that one is famous because of the aircraft liner that went missing there, and they found very little wreckage. But 55 people went missing with that aircraft when it went down. But also, Lake Superior has at least two different triangle areas. One along the north shore, which is more Wisconsin, Minnesota side. And then there's one that is right there. It stretches from the Canadian, part of Lake Superior into the Michigan part. And that is actually an area where it's called the Shipwreck Graveyard. And the most famous one that went down there was at the Edmund Fitzgerald.
Yep, exactly. And Lake Superior is a very powerful body of water, and it's the biggest fresh body of water in the world. It's basically its own sea. They have a huge body of water, and massive ships the biggest ships in the world have actually gone down in that body of water. And there are squalls and hurricane type gale forces and rogue waves, been reported in that, so.
Yeah, there's Lake Superior is she has her own mindset, and when she decides to act upon it, she will. So it doesn't, you can have it on summer day and the storm will go down.
Yeah, and usually it's a pretty cold body of water, and pretty ancient also, and a lot of Native American stories and myths and legends and creatures associated with that body of water and all the Great Lakes. But and a lot of reports of sea serpents. We, of course, back in the day, before they built the locks of the St. Lawrence River and all that, there was access for creatures to come up through the ocean and access to the Great Lakes. Bull sharks are still reported in the Great Lakes, but you actually have all these creatures that could have made it and evolved and stayed in the Great Lakes, or whales have even been reported getting stuck in modern times of trying to take the same route. So very interesting, and a lot of we do have a lot of reports of different type of creatures, big eels, and I think there's some Nessie ones and all sorts of things, swimming around and in our river systems also too.
Yeah, the bull shark reports, I would say those could have happened up until 1955, 1960, and then after that they started putting in box dams to control the ancient carp populations that were overtaking. So really not a possibility for a bull shark unless somebody introduced it into the lakes. And then it's a possibility of surviving. Yes, they can swim in fresh water and can live definitely in fresh water, but it's really the temperature of the water that would become a factor, because our Great Lakes are not that warm, and the warmest part of the lake is actually closer to shoreline. A lot more people would be reporting bull shark or something if one was actually in the Great Lakes.
There's piranha in the Great Lakes, right?
There's also jellyfish too, but they're so tiny that the stinger doesn't really affect humans.
Yep.
But, yeah.
Now, the reason the piranha can survive, people think it's crazy that they survive a winter, is because the power plants in Muskegon and Manistee and stuff, and people dump their piranhas when they get too big. This is what basically happened decades ago when piranhas were popular and everybody had piranhas. They didn't want to kill them. They wouldn't fit down the toilet. They dumped them in the lake. And they adapted to go to the power plants because the temperature is over 70 degrees year-round around them.
Yeah, and that is actually an issue with introduced species all around the world, is once something becomes very popular and people get it, it's an impulse buy, and once it becomes too much for them to handle, they just think, I'll release it into the wild, and it can fend for itself. But as we've seen with like the Asian carp populations, they are a nuisance species that are very prolific in reproduction. The Burmese pythons down in Florida, these are snakes that are generations after the ones that got loose during the hurricanes.
Yeah, Hurricane Andrew is where it all happened. Few people released some, but Hurricane Andrew set the Everglades afloat.
Basically on fire.
Yep.
Yeah, and Florida is actually...
oh, wow, we got you back. You don't sound like Mickey Mouse. Awesome.
Awesome. But Florida is actually
dang it, Chad.
I jinxed us. Oh, no. I think it's your mic. Jiggle it or something.
It's on my phone.
There you go. No, there you go. That's great right there. Perfect.
Okay. I will hold it right there.
All right.
Awesome.
But like Florida is, everybody's dream destination for a vacation spot. But unfortunately, the things that make it so popular as a tourist destination for vacations makes it the perfect breeding ground for everything else in the world. So you have, reptile species from all over the world living there and breeding. You have primates living there, breeding. You have exotic cats living there, breeding. We now have American crocodiles because of, the hospitable climate of Florida.
How about fire ants? Where did fire ants come from, Shetan? They're non-native. They're non-native to Florida. Where'd they come from? Thank you, Spaniards. Thank you, Spaniards, for bringing shipments over here with fire ants in them.
Yeah, that was a big problem a couple decades ago.
Produce and vegetables, every year people report, hey, I bought a bundle of bananas, or I bought this plant, and suddenly I got this creature, this insect or this lizard or something, running around my house that came off the produce or the plant. And so, it's not to quote the Jurassic Park, but life finds a way. It's when there's a chance, nature will take it.
Exactly. Exactly. And Florida is kind of now become a bio lab of diversity, and who knows what's going to evolve out of that, the next couple hundred years and stuff, or even shorter, that decades stuff, because they're finding, like the last show we just had with Ken Gerhard, this massive python that they opened up, 300 eggs, and she's like 300 pounds or something, mass, seem to be getting, massively huge, and it seems like, Florida is the perfect spot, and easier spot for these creatures to live too, not as bad competition. So they might be getting bigger in and of itself because of that.
The dangers of development are moving them out of their areas and bringing them closer to us. That's where the danger is. That's why they're killing animals. That's why they're killing people. That's why alligators are coming on golf courses.
Yep.
It's not because they don't have a place to go. It's because we took their place to go.
Right.
And it's survival. And they're not doing anything wrong by what they're doing. It's us.
Right. And they're just trying to make a living out of this world, just like we do.
Yeah, exactly. And when we had Dave Sheely on, he's from the Big Cypress down there. And, when he was out there, he's in certain spots where there's sharks swimming in the swamp, there'd be a big old tiger shark right there next to him, behind him. And like you were saying, there's actual, like, basically chimpanzees out there, and orangutans that are out there and have been released and are supposedly being studied by scientists as a viable group of population that is actually surviving in the Florida for decades now.
But isn't the truth that most
could be evolving differently, and could be could be smarter?
They weren't
who
released,
knows?
right? I mean, they're not.
I think, again, some may be released, some may hurricane, a lot of factors, but seems like there's a big enough population to inquire study from actual scientists and stuff down there. So,
well, and then you also look at, exotic species wise, Florida is the wintering grounds for most of the circuses, and so you look at these species that have possibly escaped, and now they are also living down there and making a living down there. I mean, there's reports all the time in, I believe it's Wisconsin, of kangaroos and people seeing kangaroos. So it's wherever a species can find a habitat to live in, they will take advantage of it, and they will make it work for them. Which is why Michigan is so wonderful. Even though we hate the snow and the ice, but at least we know that, one, crocodiles, alligators cannot live during the wintertime in our waters. Bull sharks can't do that. It's kind of nice having snow and ice when you think of that.
All we got to worry about is Dogman.
Yeah, exactly. And real quick before we get into that subject, Texas is another breeding ground of the same things happening. It's a biodiverse. There's kangaroos reported in Texas, it's the same kind of habitat, and it could be a problem. All these exotics, actually having viable populations, and could be why reports of black cats, and England is another good spot where cats could be these populations of
do you know
mixed
why we have a pig problem?
circus animals and
Because
stuff.
this is right on your topic of what you're exactly saying. Let a couple kangaroos loose, and next thing you know, in 20 years you got 100, and then in 30 years you got 5,000. The whole wild pig problem came from the Depression.
Yep.
Okay, because wild pigs aren't native here.
Exactly.
And during the Depression, they released them because they couldn't feed them. They figured they'd let them forage on their own and they would hunt them. And that, back in the 1930s, is why Texas, Florida, Arkansas, all these places have this infestation of a non-native North American animal.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. They, there's a story from my family of my dad's grandfather being a little small time farmer, but he had basically a Russian pig. It was, had red hair and a really ugly snout, my dad said. And my grandpa said that hog would eat you if you got in that pen. Stay out of that pen, boy. And, back in the day, you could have deer and stuff. So when the Depression hit, they released a lot of stuff they couldn't feed, or if they couldn't, preserve it enough or do whatever. And it's a problem.
At one point in North America, squirrels were actually the most favorite pet that there was. And so you look at, these gray squirrels, black squirrels, red squirrels. We've actually had albino squirrels around here. But squirrels were actually a very popular pet to have. And so now, everywhere you go, you see a squirrel. I mean, doesn't matter what city you're in or, city, country, there's squirrels everywhere.
Yeah, exactly. And, a couple hundred years from now, North America and its animals could look very different. It could look a little bit like Africa and kind of everywhere else, a melting pot of stuff. But getting back to the topic of Dogman, you are actually head person of the Michigan Dogman chapter.
Yes, I am the lead investigator for the Michigan chapter of the North American Dogman Project. Awesome.
And of course, we have a lot of history of being the state of Dogman. We have a lot of reports and stuff. I'm sure you have a lot of reports. I've actually had my own encounter with a Dogman type of, I guess.
I want to hear it. I want to hear it. Come on, Blake.
Oh, okay.
Talk. I want to hear it.
So, I was, basically driving home from the grocery store with the family and taking this road that I've took thousands of times over. This was I think this was October 4th, but the first week of October for sure. It was like around 7:30. It was getting dark. We had the brights on, but it was bright enough that you could still see everything. We're just concerned about deer, but so we're driving along, and basically, I see some movement and it starts crossing the road, and as soon as its head crosses that first white line, I was thinking, wow, this is awesome. It's a coyote crossing a road, which is pretty cool to see. When it gets to the middle of the road, I then see how big it is and long it is, and I'm like, wow, it's a wolf. I mean, this thing is huge. And we're going, like 50 miles an hour, and I might be slowing down a little bit, but it was a typical lighter colored hair, maybe a brownish white type of hair, and looked very exactly like a big wolf.
Oh, wow.
Not like a werewolf type of creature or anything, just a very big wolf. It went from a coyote to a wolf size. I'm like, wow, and then it crosses the road, it runs in the field, and then it stood up and starts sprinting on its hind legs like a human. And it runs, and it's just as fast as it is on the ground, and it's hauling.
Wow.
So when it crossed the road, it's really going fast. It's digging its head. I don't know if you ever see a bear run, how their head goes, does that bouncing motion when they're really thrusting. It was doing that to beat the car.
Oh, wow.
Its eyes were reflecting the light off the car, and I could see at one point both eyes, like it was looking at us. And my girlfriend, fiance, commented that she felt like it was definitely looking right at us and through her or through us. But I could definitely seen both eyes at one point shine and reflect, like if it turned, and it was fast, and it got up and it ran on its two legs sprinting. Okay, and it looks like a wolf.
Mm-hmm.
It still looks like a wolf. It didn't look like it changed or transformed anything. It still looks like exactly like a wolf. I didn't really get a good look at its paws or anything, but I asked her, we don't stop. I have a cat right there, ready to go, but I don't stop because we got kids in the car and all that, and
Right.
she's telling me to. But so we continued driving. We never stopped fully or anything. And I asked her, what was that? What was that? What'd you see? And I was like, well, did you see it run on two legs? And she's like, yes. And from her perspective, I guess she said that at first she thought there was a person standing on the side of the road,
Okay.
and then went down on four legs. She at first was seeing the eye shine and thought it was a bike or something because it was doing the head motion.
Mm-hmm.
But when it obviously was in the middle of the road, it was a wolf, as she was thinking, or a coyote. And she said she's seen it get up and run on sprint on its two legs, like a human.
Wow.
And that was, right here in Lower Michigan.
Yeah. And see, that's, it's important for people to understand when we're talking about Dogman, we're talking about a creature that stays in canine form. I'm actually being hit by a canine right now. Her big paw just whacked me. But it stays in canine form, whether it's on all fours or it goes bipedal. It stays in canine form. It doesn't change from a human being into a canine, which would be your wolfman.
Right.
And it doesn't, on a full moon, being the seventh son, born on the seventh year, it doesn't turn into a human creature. That's a werewolf. Those are, werewolf is a folklore, a cultural entity. Wolfman is a Hollywood creation. Dogman, and I'm sorry that my phone keeps moving, but my arm is getting smacked by a 150-pound mastiff, who is being very bad right now.
What about a skinwalker? Because now the other half of this, right. The other half of this. Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, skinwalker is a completely different thing. Wendigo is a completely different thing.
Or Native American shamanism too.
Yeah. Yes. When you're talking about a skinwalker, you are talking about a Native American shaman who has decided to engage in very dark practices to enable themselves to become a skinwalker and take on the shape and appearance of an animal. And when they do this, it's because they have ill intentions to do this. And I was very agitated a couple of weeks ago because there was a TV show on, and the researchers started out, they were looking for skinwalkers, and then they morphed it from they were looking for skinwalkers into they were in Wisconsin looking for the Beast of Bray Road. And I'm like, no, two totally separate things. And so when we're talking about Dogman, we're talking about a creature that is canine in appearance, whether it is on all fours or walking bipedally. A werewolf is a cultural aspect where it is believed that the moon phase, the year you were born, that all plays into you becoming a werewolf. A wolfman is
Right.
Hollywood at its best, trying to keep up with Dracula and the creature of the Black Lagoon. Skinwalker is a Native American shaman, usually from the Southwest or from Canada, who has engaged in practices, religious ritual practices, to accomplish their goal of becoming a skinwalker. A Wendigo is a completely separate thing. That
Yes.
is more of a parasitic entity that invades people, possesses them, and really takes over their mindsets and causes them to have these delusions where they want to eat flesh and will consume human beings, will consume their own lips, their own fingers, to satiate that hunger. So we're talking about, several different things, but they're not all dogman. They're not all skinwalker. They're not all Wendigo. They are each individually their own unique creature.
No, Shetan. A firm belief I have, and I can't prove it, but it only makes sense, and I believe it. Like you said, the dog man will spend most of its time probably on all fours. I truly believe Bigfoot spends more time on the ground than it does standing up, and that's part of how it can stay hidden so well.
Mm-hmm.
And it only makes sense, and they can probably maneuver on all fours, like you said, a dog man can, just as fast as they can standing up.
Yep. Well, if you look at the large primates of the world, your great apes, your gorillas, your orangutans, they generally, when they find an area to feed, that's where they set up shop, and they will graze there until they either are having to interact with a rival, population, another group, humans, as poachers or predators, or their food supply is diminished and they have to move to another spot. They're not walking around like humans. We waste so much energy, day to day, because we're always on the move, we're always on the go, and we're always going here and there. But primates in the wild, they don't do that. They will maybe travel a half mile to a new food area, and then they spend the next several weeks eating. And that's all they do. They sit, they groom each other, they eat, they breed, for reproduction and for fun. That's the only way I'm going to say it. And then once the food supply is diminished, they will move to the next area. You don't see them unless there is a war going on. You do not see them, uh, you know, using and burning up needless calories by moving around. They just sit in one spot and they eat. I think that the hunter gatherers of the Sasquatches, the females with their babies, I think that's primarily what they do. Males might travel a little bit more because a male will wear out its welcome within a community, because there's once they have enough of one genetic going on, it's kind of time for the male to move on to a different population and to breed with the females in that area.
I'm a firm believer that the juveniles are the worker ants of everything. The juveniles do. I that's what I believe. What's your opinion on that, Shetan?
Well, that kind of makes sense, because if you've ever looked at any of the apple trees, fruit trees at the orchards here in Michigan, these are not huge trees. They're maybe 8 feet tall at that. So
right, they're not too big.
You can't tell me that to get up into the upper branches, which are a little bit higher, a tree like that is not going to support a 300-pound or more animal moving through it. You're going to be breaking limbs off, which is going to be quite noticeable. But if you have a smaller animal, a younger animal who can move up and down those trees, or stand on the shoulders of an adult and pick the fruit off and throw it on the ground, then they are utilizing a workforce that is very necessary. Okay, Perso, get off me.
We just had Robert Kreider on the other night, an incredible man, full of knowledge. And he was discussing how they were draining blood out of goats on a farm, and they were actually using tools. He said it appeared like they used a stick to puncture the femoral artery and the jugular, and no blood left behind. But like we talked, if that animal was left alive and its neck was just broken, it's going to pump all its blood out, and they're just going to drink it. What's your opinion on that? Because that really interests me.
Well, see, the weird thing about blood is, even though it is what gives us life and keeps us moving, it is not very digestible because of the high iron content in it. And
what if you're iron deficient?
Well, that's what I was just about to.
Yeah, and then the sodium and then there's sodium in it, high amounts of sodium in blood.
So if you were having a deficiency, that would be when you start looking for those necessary commodities. People always wonder why we don't find a whole lot of skeletons in the woods. It's because bones are made up of calcium. Calcium is a highly sought after, commodity in the wild.
By everything.
Every creature needs it. So, rodents will carry off pieces to gnaw on, especially females who are producing that calcium gets passed into their offspring. So if a individual species is very lacking or very deficient in iron or different trace minerals, then I could possibly see them being a predator and drawing blood out of another animal, and that would be the only reason why I would see them doing it.
Yeah, I thought it was fascinating. No blood left behind. That they vampire sucked out of. It's pretty hard for me to fathom how there's no blood left behind. Even if you are, a Bigfoot, it'd be pretty hard to drain all the blood out of you like that, and leave nothing behind. I mean, it's one thing to drain most of the blood, but like leaving nothing behind, it seems very Seems a very chupacabra to me, and very interesting, no doubt. A report.
We've had a couple of chupacabra reports here in Michigan too, in different areas. So
Oh, really? Tell us about that. That's very interesting. Now, is this that canine version, or is this an actual old time version of the gargoyle?
The one report that I heard the most about occurred in Holly, and I do believe it was like a canine type creature that the gentleman reported. It's been a couple of years now, but I do believe it was either on Monster Quest or on Monsters in America that they were talking about it.
Did they have photos of it too, right?
I don't know if he had photos of it or if other people had obtained photos of it. Yeah. The story goes that this guy was a repo driver and he found out where these people were hiding a car. So he went to go get it. And as he was trying to hook up the car to tow it away, he heard, something in the woods. And then he saw the creature and he fled. And according to him, he thought it was the El Chupacabra.
Huh. It's very interesting.
Coyote with mange on a lot of these cases. I mean, the canine cases. I mean, not saying all of them, but
no. I mean, if you look at a black bear that has mange, it looks completely different than a fully furred black bear. And a lot of people will post the pictures and say, "Oh my God, what is this?" Well, mange is a very natural occurring skin disease illness in all animals. It's fortunate for domesticated dogs that we have veterinarian access, but wild coyotes, wild foxes, wild bears, they don't have that luxury. So really it's either their body starts fighting it off and they get a natural immunity to it, or they find cedar or something like that to roll on. The oils will help work with that, or they just sadly some of them it becomes their life sentence, and actually the way that they die is from mange.
Right. And going back to the Dogman thing, reports I guess we can't. You and I think you get the same feeling as the reports of dogman we have here in Michigan are especially of a normal wolf type that gets up and looks very just a
Mhm.
normal wolf, stands up, not a werewolf bulky body. This thing wasn't
Right.
like Arnold Schwarzenegger. I mean, it was massive and it had huge muscles, but it wasn't like disproportionate or any human like type of way. It was a massive wolf, and I've been looking up massive wolf videos, and it's it was I would say as top contender. I mean,
Mhm.
it was huge, and when it stood up, it was, let's say, 6 foot at least. I mean, it was as tall as me. It looked,
Mhm.
And how do you think the biomechanics of this works? Because it goes
Well,
from a canine and it starts sprinting like a human. I mean,
mhm. But
it's
but it
running,
can
it's
be,
using its hands. I mean, it's very human like.
yeah. But
But I
it
didn't get
can
a super
be
close notion of how its actual biomechanic is working at that point because
right.
I'm looking kind of at its back and I'm also driving past it.
But it is possible for it to do it, because I have seen videos of domesticated dogs that have learned to walk on their back legs and do so very well, to the point where it's a very sought after. Asian countries, the little poodle doodle things that they breed, that's the end thing, is to have a dog that can walk by itself on its back legs, and these dogs do it better than a toddler. It's almost freaky watching it, but they've been trained like that since they were babies to walk on their back legs. Now, if you have a species that has the ability to walk bipedally or on all fours, with just a little bit of counterbalancing, let's say, without having a live specimen to examine and see what their skeletal makeup of, we don't know what the process is that they can, walk on their hind legs. It might be that they have an adaptation in the hip and the spine that allows them to do this. And depending on what kind of terrain that they're walking on, um, it's either easier to go on all fours or walk on two legs. Case in point, me being a human being, yeah, I could walk up those rock steps with no problem. But going down, it was like certain death. So here I am on my butt, sliding, dropping down, sliding, dropping down, which to any other natural occurring species probably was quite hilarious. They were
Right.
probably laughing about it in the woods. But I'm a human. I can walk on two legs. I can crawl on my knees, hands and knees. But here I am, sitting down on these steps and sliding along to get down to the base of the trail where I can walk on my two legs again. And you know, another species observing that would probably say, "Wow, I didn't know humans did that." What weirdness is that? Um, so we don't really know what their skeletal configuration is that might support them being able to walk bipedally and on four legs. We look at the
Yeah.
great apes, who can walk short distances on their back legs, but are just as capable of walking on their knuckles and hind feet. So they have adapted to be able to do both, or to use their arms to move them along tree branches.
Yeah, it's very fascinating. Who knows? Maybe it's a new evolutionary trait of wolves, or just a species that's been around. I mean, what's your feeling in that? What is this? Something evolving? Is it something that's been around? Is this
Oh,
military genetic engineering?
I
Dog soldiers? There's
yeah.
a group of Native Americans that were doing stuff. Not necessarily evil, but
No, I don't think it's a military weapon. That's me. But I do think throughout history, humans have gone in one direction. Bigfoots have gone in another, and I think dogmen have gone in their own direction. And just like we think, there are reptilian alien groups, what's to say that there's not canine looking aliens? And what if they're here on Earth just to monitor us and to, keep knowledge of what the humans are doing? Because if we're so intent to, use up our own planet, then other species out in the galaxy will probably start to take notice and be like, huh, so once they're done with Earth, where are they going to go?
Just look at the Egyptians, Shetan. I mean,
true point.
Some of their gods were canine humanoids, and they worshiped them. Yes.
Yep. Anubis was actually the jackal-headed god, which is a canine. People who have the pharaoh hounds or Abyssinian hounds, this is the same head that they, their dogs have. And, this was very much one of their gods, and a very well-known god at that. So, you can't tell me that they didn't have interactions with something of that nature and put it on such a pedestal above where they were as human beings that, because they worshiped this.
Right.
And we can see it how many years later? I mean, we see this stuff that they did. How many years ago? Was it 1 million? Was it 300,000?
I'm thinking thousands. Millions would take us back to, dinosaurs and prehistoric mammals and stuff like that. So.
Yeah.
So a couple 100,000 years ago. And this stuff still stands.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah. Egypt is the great adventure, because it seems like wherever you have sand, you have the possibility for discovery, because sand covers everything up, and stuff is very quickly lost to human knowledge. And then 10 years later, 100 years later, people come along and they find, the tip of something, and then they start excavating, and suddenly they have a whole village. Suddenly
Correct.
They have a pyramid. Yep. They have ancient temples that nobody knew was there. And yet it's been there all along. It was just covered with the sand.
So there is legends of very great cities and lost treasures sunken into the sand, that's out there. These people, very well-known legends and ancient cities and stuff that are buried out there. They say that it's buried out there, and we do find new stuff each and every year. Mm-hmm. It's very fascinating.
Just like in Central America and South America, ancient ruins are discovered all the time because the forest overtakes it, and if it's not being used by humans, then nature takes it back. And once the vines and the leaves and the animals and the insects come back and take it over, then it's lost to human knowledge, only to be rediscovered again.
This is incredible, because the pyramids, nobody walked on the pyramids and discovered them. Okay, they were unearthed. Mm-hmm. Okay, people did research, unearthed them. The pyramids were undug, correct? Were they buried? Right. Sand has been moved. They were all totally buried. They were unearthed, and it's just incredible to think that pre-Bible, where everything was supposed to begin, we were here.
Well, some of those stories of those people are living. Get your phone out, Chad.
That's not me.
Not to get into anything, but some of these people that living in the Bible are, living, like hundreds of years old, and it seems like if it might be spaced out a little bit more than 6,000 years or whatever they say it is, but mm-hmm. I believe I believe that definitely humans have been here. to build the pyramids, you have to start somewhere, like I said, and you don't just start building the pyramids on day one. So
Right.
of civilization, so you have to get to that point. And there's the Sumerians and stuff. They have the certain stone tablets of the kings who are living thousands of years and of their reigns and stuff like that. And it goes back
think about it.
250,000 years or something like that. And
it's actually been documented that there was a copper tablet found in the UP with Phoenician writing on it. And there's more than one expert who has found more stones, up to a half a mile inland on the Upper Peninsula, which means that at some point those were underwater. And so the ancient Greeks, the Phoenicians, they were coming to the Michigan UP for that very, very pure copper, and were taking it. And Oak Island, people don't realize that the reason that Oak Island is named Oak Island, yes, that Oak Island, the one that they're digging on still, was because the Phoenicians used that as a land reference and had planted these gigantic oak trees on it, which have all been cut down nowadays. There's none remaining on the island. But the reason it was called Oak Island was because they had these gigantic oak trees on it. And the ancient maritime sailors knew when they saw that oak, those oak trees, that was a navigation point. And you knew that you were close to getting to, maybe not the next day getting the copper, but, within a week, maybe months, depending on the weather. But, the ancients were coming here to get this resource of this pure copper that they needed for, their weapons, for ornamentation,
the whole Bronze Age.
Daily living.
Yeah, the whole Bronze Age could have been fueled off of this, these mines, or at least that mine. It's very pure copper, so it's traced back to this exact mine. And this mine is very ancient. And even when Europeans settled and Michigan was being settled, we settled and mined that too. And we, there's local legends of they're finding these ancient stuff before they mined it, and they of course, through their mining, destroyed a lot of the evidence, of course, of this ancient mine. So it was definitely been used by humans for a very long time. It's funny, but and of course, those Greeks have stories of monsters and distant lands and all these other things.
Yep.
Coming to North America, it makes you wonder, what was going on here.
Oh yeah, because they would have been experiencing the same type of creatures that our Native American tribes were. And we have these stories of thunderbirds. We have the underwater panthers. Depending on what tribe they're interacting with, they each had, these stories that they would refer to about these different creatures. So, you can't tell me that at one point the Phoenicians and the Greeks and anybody else from the Mediterranean area were not interacting with the North American Native Americans.
Right, exactly, and it's very interesting, and it's the New World is not very new. Let's just put it that way. And the Chinese came here, all sorts of groups. There used to be there's a land bridge that everyone knows about, of course, from Asia, North America. But there's also theories of a European land bridge. Maybe around the same time, a little earlier, but because they find European ancestry in Native Americans and stuff, but that goes back to very ancient times, not way farther than what we were just talking about, the Greeks and stuff. But and also in medieval times, there's places where they have depictions of corn, and corn is very North American.
Yep.
You don't get corn in Europe unless you came to North America and brought it back. So.
Yeah, here, a lot of people don't realize this, but maize, corn, was actually growing in Wisconsin before it was growing in Central America, which means tribes that were very northern migrated to the
You're right.
south, probably
Exactly.
because it was better living conditions, and they took the crop with them, and that's how corn and maize started being produced in the southern states into Central America and South America.
Right, right. And even going back to Legend of Atlantis, this
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people say seafaring, like the Phoenicians type of people, and with a lot of these bases around the world of trade,
Mm-hmm.
trading. So it's all interesting, and Michigan seems like a very interesting part of that, and but the rest of America too, because each state is very interesting and
Oh yeah.
has its own legends, just kind of like Michigan if you dive deep, and
Mm-hmm.
local American stories and civilizations like the giants who built fortresses, and I know in Appalachia they have the Moon People, and
Yep.
again people that were building fortresses and stonework and stuff, not just like Native Americans in teepee structures, but so there's a lot going on. It
Oh
makes
yeah.
you really wonder, what's buried under here, and uh, what do you think about the underground or hollow earth and karst in particular, but creatures that live underground in cave systems that basically are the same as they were, billions of years ago. If you really think about the
Oh,
cave systems, they don't
I
change. I
think
mean,
there's,
cave
I think
systems
there's,
collapse on itself and change and stuff, but that ecosystem is basically the
yep.
same.
Yeah, I think that there's every possibility of subterranean tunnels with living, life forms in them. Much, probably much more advanced than just the blind shrimp or salamanders or spiders or whatever, bats. And these are hidden realms that humans are probably not going to find because not too many of us want to go out into the vast wilderness and go crawling through holes to see where they lead to. That's very, very dangerous. If you're going with a team, it's one thing. If you're just doing it by yourself, you can get lost down a cavern and never be heard from again. So there's lots of potential out there for anything to, live undetected from human beings, whether it's subterranean, whether it's in the depths of the ocean, whether it's in, deep pocketed, forests and jungles. Um, there will never be a date and time in human existence where we've discovered everything that is living or has lived on this planet. There's always something new to be found.
Yeah, exactly. What a wonderful planet we live on, and what a wonderful mystery it is. Um, well, we almost at the 2 hour mark, so is there anything else you want to talk about, Shetan, or maybe plug or stuff, or some of your books and stuff? You got some books, of
Sure.
course, and
So if people want to check out my podcast, it's Into the Liminal Abyss Paranormal Podcast, and it airs on Soul or Anchor for the Soul Paranormal Network. There's new episodes being put on every Saturday night. And for my books, if you just go on Amazon and put in my name, Shetan, Shetannoir, you will find my latest books on cryptozoology, which is Lake Monsters and Odd Creatures of the Great Lakes, Mothman and Other Flying Creatures of the Midwest, and The Marvelous Misadventures of Tegan Gray. Tegan Gray Meets Bigfoot. That's more of a child's book, but it's got really cute photography in it with my miniature pincher interacting with our Bigfoot. creature. It's a costume. I tried to keep it as funny as possible because I didn't want kids to be scared when looking at the book. If you're interested in the magazines that I write for, it is Squatch, SQUATCH, GQ Inc. And you can find that on Facebook or at the website. Feel free to contact me through Facebook. If you have had any experiences with cryptids, UFOs, ghosts, high strangeness, I interview everybody about everything. So feel free to contact me if you want to set up a written interview, and I'll take your story. We'll get you into the magazines, and then event-wise, definitely looking forward to the Michigan Bigfoot convention there in July, and also the Dewey Lake Monster event in September. I post all my other events on Facebook, so you can keep track of me on there.
Yeah, it's awesome. And real quick, we got a question that I think would be very interesting. Might take us over a little bit, but she wants to know. Jean wants to know about mermaids. You know, what do you think about mermaids, and what about mermaids in the Great Lakes?
So I will say that there was a report going back to, I believe, the 1700s of a mermaid-type creature in Lake Superior. And the name of the creature was Nibis or Nibis Manitou. Manitou means spirit, and the Nibis just refers to its name as the god of the water. And the legend goes that a fur trader had secured the navigation and help of a local Native American woman. And they had set up on Pie Island to stay there for a few days. And they saw this, what they thought was a small child out in the water. And they were watching it. It was watching them. And then the Native American woman started to freak out. And she proceeded to tell them, this is the great water god of the Great Lakes. And now that we've seen him, we need to get as far inland as we can because he's sending a storm. And they said, oh, it's a beaver. And so they were going to shoot it and collect the pelt. And she's like, no, you do not want to do that. So she finally talked them down from that. And she said, no, really, we need to get inshore as far onto the island as we can because a storm is coming now. And so she made straight for the center of the island. And lo and behold, for the next 3 days, they were caught in a gale force storm. And so they survived it. But the first trader, went on to tell other people of this merman type creature that was living in the Great Lakes.
Very interesting.
If we're gonna go that weird, let's go. You told us a story earlier, Shetan.
Yes.
About you and your dog.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, you guys rode on a ferry to Mackinac Island.
No, we didn't ride on the ferry. We went to Mackinac City, and when we used the public restroom, the first time I had my little dog with me. And then when I came back a couple of months later, I went into the same public restroom and used the exact same stall. And then right before I was going to leave the stall, a voice said, what? No puppy this time?
Well, my question was about fairies. I mean, A lot of people believe they're real. I don't know. There's a lot of mythical stuff out there. There's a lot of things that can manifest and your mind can create. What do you think about fairies, seeing we went to Mermaids?
I know that there are reports of fairies on Mackinac Island, but we do have two very interesting creatures. One is here in Detroit called the Nain Rouge. He is a lutin, and fairies do fall under that group of creatures, the lutins. And then we have the pudgewudgies, which nobody's really seen them in Michigan, but they have been spotted in Indiana. So the Nain Rouge, for people who don't know, is a creature that was provoked when the French first traders came here and established Fort Detroit. And every year since, we've had, dealings with him, whether it was, a blackout or riots or ice storms, part of the city burning down. The Nain Rouge is always blamed for it. Now, for the past 10 years, every March we've had a parade where we drive him out of town, but last year and this year have both been canceled. So I think the Nain Rouge might be getting back at us. Now, the Pudgewudgies are more of a Native American, but people have seen them all over the United States. And these are creatures that are less than knee high. It's said that they will try to get you to follow them into the woods. And if you do that, you're never heard from again. So they're kind of a prankster type entity. And they've been documented in like the Bridgewater Triangle in Massachusetts, Indiana, Texas, even over on the east, the West Coast. So I do know of those types of fairies, the Lutons. But if you're talking like Tinkerbell, I haven't had any experiences with fairies like that.
Wow, this has been great. We went all over the board, man. We talked about. Did we leave one out? Hey, okay, Chad.
Oh,
did we leave out? Did we leave out anything that you guys want to know about? Just checking.
Yeah, what a jam-packed show! That was an awesome show, filled of great things, and showcasing Michigan as a kind of spot of a lot of activity and ancient things. So it's kind of all like that in all of North America, I believe, in Central and South America. So it's very interesting land that we live on and live above. So.
I have cryptid friends overseas and stuff, and they post a lot of stuff about Michigan because Michigan does have it's a weird state, and it's got its fair share of paranormal activity and unexplained.
Oh yeah, we have definitely a pretty good location here in Michigan with being surrounded by water. We have lots of unexplored areas that are just waiting for humans to come in.
Hey, Shetan.
Yeah.
So Gene Hudson, a follower of ours, a loyal follower, has a question. Okay. Is there really a triangle in the Great Lakes? And can you explain to her what it is?
Yeah. So, like I was saying earlier, each one of the Great Lakes actually has what we call a triangle. Lake Michigan, it runs Ludington over to Manitowoc, Wisconsin, then back across the lake to Benton Harbor, Michigan, and then back up to Ludington. Lake Superior, there is one that is the Minnesota-Wisconsin border, and then it kind of comes down to the Upper Peninsula of Michigan and then cuts back across. And then right there near Whitefish Point is another triangle, and that is where there is lots and lots of boats that have sunk. That's the shipwreck cemetery or graveyard. Then in Lake Huron, we have an area that goes from the Alpena area down to the tip of the thumb, then runs across to the lake or city of Saginaw, and then back up to Alpena, over or down in Lake Erie. It's actually the quad angle, which takes up quite a big portion of the lake, and that's where most of the shipwrecks are. Lake Ontario, there is the Marysburg vortex, which is also another area that has is associated like a doubles triangle. And they've had lots of weird happenings in that area with shipwrecks and UFO sightings and stuff of that nature.
Now, are these areas more magnetic than most areas? Is there a correlation with extra magnetic frequency in these areas?
I do know in the Lake Ontario area, the Marysville vortex that's there, they say that there is a huge meteorite sunken into the bed of the lake, and that causes a lot of magnetic anomalies. But for the other Great Lakes, I do not think that they have proven that yet of, there being any meteorites or magnetics going on other than maybe the natural mineralization of the lake bed. But, to go down and explore the lake beds, that's really quite an adventure because you need ROVs, you need a submarine, and you need people who know how to operate those, and you need divers who can go out and collect samples. And the Great Lakes, as beautiful as they are, they're not always calm, and they're not always that helpful when you're trying to do research of that nature.
They're dangerous. They're big bodies of water.
Yeah.
They're dangerous. And, real quick, are there ley lines in Michigan? Of course,
Oh yes. Oh yes.
Oh yeah. Oh, of course.
Yeah, there's ley lines run all over the earth, and so it's there's not just one location that has ley lines. They actually run all over the earth, and if you actually get a map of ley lines, you will see that most major cities and civilization activity points are right on these ley lines, and they it's actually quite an interesting phenomenon that humans as a population, we have unknowingly built our civilizations along these ley lines.
Do you have a theory at all, or have you heard a theory of why this phenomenon happens? Why, just ironically, we build civilizations right on top of them?
I think it's just a drawing point. It's for humans, it's probably like animals have an innate inherited migratory path, of where their species travel to for breeding, for bad dog, for food and stuff like that. Humans unknowingly, we have just we've become in tune with the vibration of these ley lines, and that's where we have chose to make our civilizations.
Could be part inadvertently, huh? Inadvertently, maybe it's just we're drawn.
Yeah, it could be. It could be.
Now, Gene meant in the triangles. What do you mean, Gene, in the triangles?
The ley lines in the triangles, is that anything you know about Shetan or?
Well, like I said, the ley lines are all over the earth. They're not just
talk more specifically, or
they're not just in one area. So I'm sure that there are ley lines that go through the Great Lakes and possibly pull more activity towards them. But with the Great Lakes, there's a lot of variables of what causes a shipwreck, what causes anything to happen. The lakes themselves, the weather, the time of year, this all plays into a part. And the Great Lakes are so unpredictable. So many major squalls and gale force storms that have taken out not just one ship, but up to 50 ships. These came out of nowhere, and nobody was predicting them. And so it's really interesting, when you look at the paranormal history and just the maritime history of the Great Lakes, of the circumstances of which some of these shipwrecks occurred. And you can say ley lines, you can say that the crew was not operating the boat to its maximum, or didn't know what they were doing. But the weather and the lakes themselves are a contributing factor, and more and more are a major contributing factor.
Yeah, exactly. again, very powerful bodies of water, and the Native Americans there, they were very spiritual, powerful to them.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what an amazing show! What an amazing guest, an amazing speaker that we're going to have at the Michigan Bigfoot Conference here July 17th. All day in Ann Arbor, Michigan.
Yep.
So we hope to see everyone there, and stay tuned. We'll be having more speakers and coming out with more things here shortly. So
yep.
Without that further ado, you guys have a wonderful night. Yep. Thank you so much. Yep. And
you're welcome. Thank you. It's been fun.
All right. Well, everyone, you guys have a good night, and we'll see you guys later.